Yo, what's going on, guys? J.Yumeko here, and today we're back finally with some more Root Double Before Crime After Days Extended Edition. So, it has been a very long time since we have played this game. Well, since I have played the game and then uploaded it and you guys watched it. But anyways, point being, we're finally back. I'm going to kind of ramble on a bit here, so I'll put a time code. Like a timestamp for where you can skip to if you don't want to listen to all this, but this is just kind of like a very quick explanation, life update, all that fun stuff. So, I was moving. It was kind of a whole clusterfuck because for a week I was just kind of packing, helping pack up the house. Then for another week I was gone. I was in Colorado for another week. And then I came back and I stayed at my cousin's house for 3 days because we didn't have a house to stay at. And then finally we ended up landing where we are now. So now I've been here for about another week or two. I didn't have access to my PC for a very long time. I only recently got it and then got it set up a couple of days ago. Other than that, I've just been at work because I have my the upcoming fall semester happening in a couple weeks. So I've been trying to work to have money to pay tuition and, also keep living expenses. It's a whole thing. So that's why it took so long. I had 100 things happening at the same time, one after the other. And so, yeah. So I apologize about that. But hopefully we'll be able to get back onto a normal-ish schedule. I think I may have mentioned it in that previous little update video I did. But I do want to start playing a Requiem for Innocence again. So I don't have the best track record when it comes to doing multiple games at once. But, we'll see. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump right on back into it. Unfortunately, I can't do my little recap thing. Not that I was very good at doing that to begin with, but, Hey, it's me. So, after 1 month of being gone, it's probably safe to say we need to be refreshed on what's happening in the story. We started our journey as Watase, a rescue captain who, under mysterious circumstances, lost his memory and must now fight to survive amidst the harsh conditions of a nuclear research lab that's currently in lockdown after a nuclear meltdown. After many trials and tribulations, we found out that there was never a nuclear reactor at all, but instead someone or something that was behind all the chaos that left us trapped here with no apparent way out. With his group of survivors having succumbed to a state of psychosis causing them to turn violent and on the verge of death, Watase is called out to by a voice, the voice of a student he'd found shot and left at the site of the non-existent nuclear reactor. We then picked up our story as Natsuhiko, a high schooler with a traumatic past who, despite having a high potential for telepathy or BC, despises it. He lives a peaceful life with his childhood friends Yuri, a girl who's scared of the outside, and Mashiro, his neighbor. The trio is soon added to with the coming of Salyu, Natsuhiko's emotionless distant cousin from France. However, it soon became apparent that Natsuhiko was being pulled back and forth from the past to present, or from a recollection into reality. The incident that induced much trauma onto Natsuhiko and Yuri remains a mystery, but Yuri's true identity/role in the story has gradually posed itself a much more prominent question as we've played, with her being the initiator of the time jump/memory sequences. In a city built for telepathy users, protected by the government and kept top secret, why did the nuclear meltdown occur? How did our protagonists find themselves wrapped up in their respective fights for escape? Who or what is behind everything if there is any being behind it? Who's Watase? Who is Yuri? And who is Salyu? Who can we trust, and who should we fear? Hopefully we'll find all that out, now that we're back playing Root Double Before Crime After Days Extended Edition. Let's see here. So yeah, this must have been save dates. My save dates are all over the goddamn place. Okay, well, it wouldn't have been Backdraft. So it has to be one of the other guys. Oof. Now I have to, like, figure out which one it was. Okay, it's not those. Dang, we've been playing this since 2025. Holy shit. Okay. We really need to lock in here. Okay, so that was... Yeah, I guess it's just the man from Labo. Alright. We'll load it up here, I guess. God, I forget how loud these games are. Let me see. Is my... Whatever, I'll leave it. And now that you thought about it, Natsuhiko did remember something he wanted to ask Ukida. Mashiro and Natsuhiko left Salyu in the classroom as they followed Ukida out. When they got out into the hallway, they caught sight of him walking away. Oh, you know what? I don't know if I've already done it, but I'll probably do some kind of recap thing beforehand. Not exactly sure how I'll do that, but we'll see. Maybe. I might be too lazy and not do it, but we'll see.
No, Natsuhiko-kun ni Mashiro-kun ka. どうしたんだね? 講義についてのクレームなら勘弁してくれたまえよ。何も慣れないものでね。
そんなんじゃないですよ。あの事故の後、無事だったのか気になって、あばらが痛いって言ってた。
Yeah, Ukida, you also like gave us an insanely ominous and vague warning. Could you fucking clear up on that, please?
お気遣いありがとう。だが病院でレントゲンを取ったら何事もなかったよ。事故を口実に2日も仕事を休めたから、むしろありがたかったくらいさ。
よかった。心配しちゃいましたよ。
Natsuhiko cut in as Mashiro sighed in relief.
ところで、おじさん。
なんだね。
あの事故の時、これから僕の身の回りでおかしなことが起きるかもしれないって言ってましたよね。
Ukida's expression stiffened at those words.
そういえば。
ああ、確かに言ったね。
あれってどういう意味だったんですか？
After a short pause, Ukida spoke in a subdued voice.
いや、実はだね。これはあくまで噂なんだが、近頃コミュニケーターを疎ましく思っている輩がこの町で増えているらしいんだ。
え？
そんな、六面士は BC の研究を奨励しているんじゃ。
それを快く思わない人間もいないわけじゃないということだよ。街中であんなに強力なテレパシーを不特定多数に発したんだ。僕の友人の話によれば、1キロほど離れた場所でもあの離れろという声が聞こえたらしい。
1キロも？
そうとも。あのテレパシーを BC 嫌いの輩が聞きつけ、君に目をつけたらと思うと、不意に心配になってね。
そうだったんですか。
Natsuhiko shuddered a bit at the unexpected answer. Outside of the school, use of BC was prohibited by city ordinance. They were taught the reasoning behind the ordinance was for manners, so they wouldn't surprise other people. But perhaps the real reason was so as not to provoke the townspeople.
どうしよう。私何日か前、バス止めるためにテレパシー使っちゃいました。
そういえばあれも不特定多数にだったな。
ああ、いや、落ち着きたまえ。あくまで強力なテレパシーだったらの。
So basically mine, because I got kilometer reaching telepathy.
問題はないだろう。大声で叫ぶのとさほど変わりはしないからね。
そうですか。よかった。
とはいえ、やはり用心するに越したことはないよ。特に夏彦君は。どうだい夏彦君。あの後テレパシーをしばしば使ったりはしてない。
Hopefully not.
ああ、いえ。あれから一度も使えてません。というかあれは何かのまぐれだったようです。
あ、そうか。それなら心配はないかもね。
Yeah, that is kind of an interesting, like, in-world thing. Telepathy being, well, telepathy and like how accepted it is. I guess because I mean, what they only discovered telepathy in like 2016, and I forget what year it is in the game, but it's been a very short time, right? I don't even think it's like anyways. Point is, it's been a very short time. I mean, I could get it, especially if you don't really know much about it. I imagine it'd probably be one of those things where once people discovered it, they're probably like, oh, telepathy, they can read our minds, and they can do this and that with it, and yada yada yada, and oh, it can be used for evil. It's like because it's like a superpower, right? Like there's been plenty of like shows and movies and books about people having something considered quote unquote superpower or supernatural ability and being ostracized for it. It's one of those things where it's like, people fear what they don't understand, that kind of thing. You would definitely expect in a city like Rokame, though, where they kind of specifically built it for BC research, that really wouldn't be a problem. But, who knows? It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, though, just how accepted it would be. So, I don't know, if I found out that there was like, oh yeah, these fucking people, they can read minds and shit, I'd be, or not even read minds, but they can, telepathically communicate. I'd be like, oh shit, cool, right? Like, that's dope, man. I wish I could do that. I wouldn't have to call people or anything. I could just like, boom, instantly lock onto their wavelength and just like tell them what I want to say. I mean, I guess in that case, how different is it really from just speaking another language? Like the amount of times that people, like, I've been in a store or something and somebody's, speaking English and then they answer a phone call and start speaking in their native language. It's like, yeah, they do that because they don't want other people around them to know what the fuck they're talking about, right? Like, it's not much different than that. Obviously, in this world, I've played around kind of presenting the theory of being able to actually control emotions and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of interesting. Anyways, let's stop rambling. Sir, yes, sir.
それでは僕はラボに戻るよ。本業が残っているのでね。
はい。ありがとうございます。
お疲れ様でした。
Yeah, and then we'll just keep it as that. I don't think we need to change it.
なんとなく
No, that was kind of ominous.
あのテレパシーが1キロ先まで届いてたってのはすごいけど。
いずれにせよ、無差別テレパシーはもう控えた方がいいな。
だね。私も少し軽率だったよ。
Mashiro sounded a little bit frightened as she spoke.
不安か、マシロ。大丈夫だよ。おじさんも言ってたじゃないか。普通のテレパシーだったら大声で叫ぶのとそんなに変わらないって。
どうしたの急に。そんなに不安げに見えた？
ちょっとな。
なーに？まさか気使ってくれてんの？
まあな。
ドストレートだね。なんか調子狂うよ。
Chat, is this Riz?
いいじゃないか心配くらい。
Mashiro suddenly smiled as she heard that.
夏彦はやっぱそういうとこだけは。
Right as Mashiro started to speak, she heard a voice from behind.
こら、そこの二人、何をやってるの？
She turned around to see Anna.
はい。
Natsuhiko and Mashiro rushed back into the classroom. And then, after an ordinary homeroom came to a close, school ended.
マシロ、サリュー、帰ろうか。
オッケー、行こうサリュー。
And together they left the classroom, all the while ignoring the clamor of voices, both real and telepathic.
さて、放課後だよしん。わかったから紅崎。
Benizaki.
そのくらいテレパシー使わず普通に話せ。いいじゃねえか。多分俺らの会話楽しんで聞いてるやつもいるよ。
Free podcast.
そうかね。いや、いるいる。え、あんた誰？ほら、よくグラウンドで野球やってる男だよ。人呼んで、ピッチャー田中。だから誰？そんなこといいから、はよ屋上行くべよ。わかった。っておい、なんかすごい人だかりだな。
They're all waiting for you.
野じ馬だよ全部。みんな暇だな。七志くんは来てるのか？屋上の様子は？ここからじゃ見えねえ。誰か確認しろ。はい、こちらピッチャー田中。屋上には女子が1名。男子はいないな。女子は宗像ちゃんだね、あれ。七志くんは来てないってことか？この人だかりじゃ顔も出せまい。おいおい、やばいぞ。それじゃ台無しじゃねえの。 ほら、野人はども散れ。人の恋路を邪魔する奴は馬に蹴られて死んじまえ。
ダメだ、全然チリやしねえ。宗方ちゃん超居心地悪そう。ここは俺の出番だな。Hello everybody! エンジェル神谷とイカリャクです。
ってちょっと待て。なんでこのタイミングで。
お前の出番じゃねえよ別に。
引っ込んでない。
いや言わせろ。七志くんに伝えたいことがあるんだ。
よし、俺が認める。言ってみろ。
Got the fucking council over here.
ありがとう見知らぬバカ。さていいか七志くん。俺はヘッポコ軽音部のボーカルとして全校生徒の嘲笑を浴びながらそれでも歌ってきた。それをなぜかどれだけ笑われても伝えたいことがあったからさ。君だって宗方ちゃんに伝えたいことがあるはずだ。恥ずかしがってる場合じゃない。行かなければ後悔するぞ。珍しくまっとうなこと
と言いつつあいつまともに歌ったって言ってないけどな。だが神谷の言う通りだ七志くん。君が出ていかないと宗方さん一人が好奇の目にさらされっぱなしになるぞ。宗方さんを救うため出てくるんだ。
おう、さすがいいこと言う。そのせいか野獣馬も静かになってきたな。
チャンスだ七志。頑張れ、男を見せろ。
あ、野獣馬の中から誰かが。
何。全員静かに。
随分待たせるじゃない。
すみません。
まあいいわ。それよりあなたそんな顔してたのね。
よく女の子みたいだってからかわれ。
Dang, she got herself a fanboy, a twink fanboy.
わかるわ。
それより宗方さん、テレパシーはみんなに聞かれて恥ずかしいんじゃ。
何を今さら。でもそうね、ここからは自分の声で話しましょう。
はい。
みんな聞こえた今の。うん、青春だ
Now
な。
that's youth for you.
青春だ。
俺聞こえなかった。誰か実況してくれる。そんなことする。
I'm not that tasteless.
俺は感動しちまったよ。エンジェル神谷、いいシーンだ。森。
Okay, everybody! それでは行きます。軽音部が2人に捧げるナンバー。Myself, yourself。だからたまにはオリジナルやれって。
ま、今日くらいはいいとしよう。
They've got the whole school wrapped up in this, like, dramatic romance story. As they pass through the hallway, Mashiro asks the other two a question.
ねえ、帰りどっか寄ってく？
いや、今日はまっすぐ帰ろう。
私もそれがいい。食事をしながらみんなで話などしたい。ほら、可愛いことを言いなさる。
まあ連日出かけるのもなんだし、今日は家でのんびりしよう。
Unlike yesterday's trip back from school, today was strangely calm and relaxing, so much so that they almost completely forgot about what Ukida had said. When they left the school building, it was dim and gloomy outside.
なんか雨降りそうだね。
Natsuhiko looked up to the sky in response. And sure enough, it looked like it could start pouring at any moment. Oh boy, I hope we can at least make it home before it starts raining. The moment Natsuhiko had that hope, drop by drop, the rain began to fall.
ありゃ、やばい。本当に降ってきたよ。
参ったな。傘持ってきてないぞ。
バスに乗ろう。そろそろ来る時間のはず。
They looked at the bus stop in front of the school just as the bus began to arrive.
お、グッドタイミング。
助かった。
And then the three of them boarded the bus as they chatted amongst themselves. It was a little crowded inside. There was probably other people who rushed to the bus after the rain started to fall too. Natsuhiko let Sayu and Mashiro sit in the seats and stood next to them.
天気が悪くなければこのままお出かけしたいんだけどな。
え？また買い物か？
だってサリュー、まだこの町のことを全然知らないんじゃない？初日に少し見て回ったけど、確かにあまりよく知らない。
そうか、そうだよ
Natsuhiko thought for a second before speaking.
それじゃあさ、あさっての日曜日にでも街を一巡りしてみようか。
いいねそれ。
Mashiro's eyes gleamed at Natsuhiko's proposal. Usually, Natsuhiko spent his Sundays with Yuri, but just this once probably wouldn't hurt.
まあ観光名所みたいなものは特にないけど、ちょっと変わった街ではあるしな。
妙案。じゃあどこか見学できる研究施設でも探してみようか。あとできればもう少し買い物もしたい。
あれ、何か買いたいものでも思いついたのか？
本。故郷から一冊だけ本を持ってきたのだけど、他にも欲しいから。
え、本一冊だけ？他に持ってきたものはないのか？
他にって身の回りの品とか？
いや、そういうのじゃなくて、例えばこう故郷を忍
No,
ば
she
せる
just brought her
思い
weird
出の
little
品
fucking
とか。
robot pet thing.
皆無。え？そういうもんなの？
Natsuhiko was a little surprised to hear that too.
13歳で家族と離れて遠い異国に来たら結構ホームシックになりそうだけど。
そういう感情は持ち合わせていない。故郷にも特に思い入れはない。
そうか。
She just
じゃ
got
あさ、
aura
じゃあさ、
like that.
この街はどう？思い入れ持てそう？
No, she hates us all.
計りかねる。好きか嫌いかもよくわからない。ありゃ、そっけない。
That's kind of blunt.
まあ日本に来たばかりなんだから好きも嫌いも判断できないだろう。
Again, I'm not convinced that she's... Because again, my running theory with Sully right now is that she's a result of the experiments at Labo. I think the whole cover story of, oh, she's a distant cousin from France. I think that's complete and utter bullshit. I think she's definitely an experiment from Labo. 100%. Also, kind of a weird side note, but it's got to be a bitch to have to like wear these uniforms. I imagine they have to have backups, but they're probably insanely expensive for one, and then for two, they probably have to be like dry cleaned as well. Like, there's no way you can just throw those into the washing machine.
それもそっか。じゃあまあ、この質問の答えは保留するとしましょう。でも、それはそれとして買い物には行きたい。真白と夏彦と。そうかそうか。では、僭越ながら私が黄金の90年代 SF を見繕ってあげよう。伝説的名作がいろいろあるんだよ。新兵器ヴァンゲールとか
Neon Genocide Vangel and Ghost in the Core. Alright, yeah.
初めて聞く題名。興味深い。
Those weren't books, but anime titles. But Natsuhiko didn't have the heart to say it.
夏彦は買いたいものはないの？
いやー、僕は特に。
Nar, I'm good, mate.
なんだ、張り合いないな。そうだ、今度は夏彦も服を買おう。
いいよ別に。
いいじゃん。夏彦は素材は割といいんだから、たまにはおしゃれしないとね。
Oh, well, you think so? Really? Huh.
おいおい、今度は僕を着せ替え人形にするのか？
そういう見方もあるかもね。
Natsuhiko smiled wryly at Mashiro's playfulness. But he had to admit, going shopping as a group did seem like fun.
ま、いいさ。たまにはそういうのもいいかもしれない。
それじゃあさっては市内を巡りつつショッピング三昧だね。きっと楽しいよ。はあ、早くあさってにならないかな。
As soon as Mashiro said that, her eyes opened wide as if she'd noticed something.
どうした？
Natsuhiko called out to her dubiously, but Mashiro didn't answer. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Far from it. She just stared straight ahead without saying a word. Her face just froze abruptly. Something was clearly wrong. Natsuhiko got worried and whispered to her.
真白。おいって。
What the fuck? That's when Mashiro slowly turned back and looked at Natsuhiko as if she'd come back to her senses.
夏彦、
どうした？何かあったのか？
あのね、
Mashiro looked around the bus, stammering. "Oh, what's wrong?" Natsuhiko looked around the bus too, but he didn't see anything happening. Everyone was just sitting quietly in their seats.
どうしたんだよ、本当に。
Mashiro didn't answer for a while, but eventually she spoke with a smile.
ごめん。なんでもないよ。
Okay. She had those fucking, like, she had that glazed over the eyes. I've just seen the most traumatic thing in my life look on her face. That's not nothing. You gotta share with us, bro. What the fuck?
実はさ、誰かが私たちに対してうるさいなって言ったような気がしたんだよ。
え？そうか、ちょっと騒ぎすぎたか。
いけない。私も反省する。
だな。少し静かにしよう。
That said, Natsuhiko was actually relieved at Mashiro's answer. The three of them then quietly waited to reach their destination. Once they got quiet, the bus was filled with silence. But occasionally, Alice would faintly growl. Aside from that, the bus was silent. Huh.
みんな、おかえり。
Interesting. I mean, I have to imagine that would have been... what was it? The empathy thing? Where you could... what am I trying to say? Hold on. Let me regain myself here. I have to imagine that was probably one of those things where it's like, you know, somebody's thinking in their head, oh, these stupid fucking empath children, shut the fuck up. You know, somebody's thinking that in their head, and then Mashiro just happened to catch on to that wavelength and, like, hear them. I'm assuming that's what it was. So, but I don't know what, like, would you go... Like, I guess I could see her having that kind of reaction just considering the kind of character she is. Hearing something like that from somebody is kind of like, you know, boom, like harsh reality check kind of thing. And especially after Ukita just mentioned, like, hey, what the fuck are these guys called? Transmitters? Is that what it was? Transmitters? Something like that. But yeah, like, oh, these anti-telepath sentiments are kind of growing, you know, stuff like that. So I could see that happening. When they got back to the house, they were greeted by Yuri.
ただいま、ユーリ。
いやー、雨に降られて大変だったよ。
Mashiro already seemed back to her cheerful self. She spoke as she headed towards the kitchen.
それじゃあご飯作るね。今日も腕によりをかけるからちょっと待ってて。
And with that, Mashiro made spaghetti with an elaborate sauce. Dinner that day ended peacefully, but after dinner, as Natsuhiko put the dishes away, Mashiro whispered to him with a meek look on her face.
ねえ、夏彦。
ん？どうした？
ちょっと話したいことがあるんだけど、いいかな？
God, I love Mashiro's voice actor because, like, when she's like, I don't, ugh, God, when she is talking in like her normal, like, when she's talking in that cheerful voice, it's very much just okay, typical like anime character, right? But like in these moments where she gets like more quiet, somber, serious, like it just, oh man, I just love how her voice kind of becomes like more grounded, I guess you could say. Like I don't really know how to explain it too well, but I just love how it has such a drastically different vibe than when she's typically speaking.
え？何？
ごめん、ここじゃちょっと。
Mashiro glanced at the sofa. Yuri and Sally were relaxing there reading books.
二人に聞かれるとまずい話か。
まずくないけど、心配か
She
けた
sounds
く
like a
ないんだ。
completely different person, dude. I love that.
うん？
Natsuhiko didn't have the slightest idea of what Mashiro was trying to say.
わかったよ。僕の部屋に行こ
And with that, Natsuhiko led Mashiro to his room.
どうぞ真白。
お邪魔します。
Mashiro shyly entered after being invited in.
で、なんだ話って。
言おうかどうしようかすごく迷ったんだけど、今から話す内容がどんなものでも信じて
I
くれる？
promise.
ああ、もちろんだ。
ありがとう。
Mashiro replied and then meekly whispered.
それじゃあ夏彦、よく聞いて。近いうちにこの町で誰かがテロを起こそうとしてるみたいなんだよ。
は？
Well, that's not too hard to believe, especially because we know what the fuck is gonna happen. Natsuhiko doubted his ears. He never expected to hear the word terrorism.
テロって真っ白。いくらなんでもそれは。
冗談じゃないよ、本気だよ。
ごめん。信じるって言ったのにな。でもなんで急にそんなこと
今日バスに乗って帰る途中、急に私が黙り込んだの覚えてる？
え？ああ。
And now that she mentioned it, that did happen. What do you mean now that she mentioned it? Motherfucker, we had a whole scene dedicated to that. There's no now that you mention it. Mashiro says she heard someone complain about their noise level.
覚えてるけど、それがどうしたんだ？
あの時私が聞いたのはうるさいなんて声じゃなくて、もっと恐ろしい独り言だったんだ。乗客の誰かがブツブツ言っていたの。声が小さくてよく聞こえなかったんだけど。
なんて言ってたんだ？
コミュニケーターは忌むべき存在だ。こんな街の歴史は終わらせてやる。
D-Day is near. Brother, we gotta get the fuck out of here, bro. Let's pack our bags and go. That did indeed sound like a hint to a terrorist plot.
私、ぎょっとしちゃって慌てて耳を澄ましてみたんだけど、すると声の主も黙っちゃって、聞き間違いだと思うことにしたんだけど、やっぱり気になってさ、なんかだんだん怖く。
Mashiro's voice oozed with fear. Her face was pale and her shoulders shook little by little. There was something strange about her.
おい真白、大丈夫か？
大丈夫。ちょっと思い出しておっかなくなっただけ。それより私思うんだけど、あの人ニュースでやってたコミュニケーター排斥を目論む過激派、あれじゃないかって気がするの。
Natsuhiko had also heard about those extremists. For one of them to be muttering to himself sounded a little eerie, but believable enough. Perhaps this incident also had something to do with how Ukida had said there was a rise in people who didn't like communicators in town.
声の主の顔。
Yeah, did you get his face? Mashiro will go fucking, will go slime his ass out.
それでももう一度会えばきっとわかる。
Mashiro focused hard on Natsuhiko as she spoke.
ねえ、きっとこのことに気づいてるのは私
I
た
would
ちだけだよ。
probably contact Ukida. I'm not gonna lie here.
だったら何としてもテロを阻止しなきゃ。
おいおい、落ち着けよ真
That's a
白。
terrible idea, Mashiro. Let's just fucking, let's let Ukida know, and then we're gonna leave town. We're gonna take a nice little vacation to the beach.
そんな独り言を言っていたからってテロリストとは限らないだろ。例えば誰かを殺したいって独り言を言っていたとしても本当に殺
Okay,
人が
you're
起きると
trying
は
to piss
限ら
me
ない
off,
さ。
Natsuhiko. Brother, nobody's just casually out there murmuring about how, like, if I was out on the fucking, like, public bus, I'm like, oh, these fucking florists in this goddamn town, I'm just gonna burn their entire fucking shop down. And I fucking hate flowers. Right? Like, if I was saying that shit on a bus, murmuring to myself about it, and somebody overheard me, I would not at all be surprised if they called the cops because they thought I was going to do something. It's one thing if, like, you know, you're talking to somebody, like, a close, you know, somebody who you're semi-close with, and you're like, oh, yeah, that person, man, I just want to fucking kill him, right? You're talking about somebody you don't like, who frustrates you. But when nobody just casually, like, talks about committing an extreme act of terrorism and referencing a D-Day about a specific minority group of people if they're not going to do something about it. So
そうじゃない。あれは本物のテロリストだよ。
I'm with Mashiro, bro.
なんでそう言い切れる？
だってあの人
Mashiro swallowed her words. She seemed unable to find how to continue.
ほら、根拠なんてないだろ。だいたい仮にそいつがテロリストだとして
Yes,
もさ、
there is. You can
僕ら
fucking
にその
report
阻止なんて
him.
できるわけないじゃな
Let
い
the
か。
police know. Let Ukita know. I would definitely like Ukita to know. I would let Anna know as well. She seems to have some pretty goddamn good standing within the school, and she would definitely be taking that shit seriously.
できるわけないって放っておくってこと？
そうじゃないけど、僕らはただの高校生だぞ。わざわざ僕らが止める必要はないだろう。
夏彦、本気で言ってるの？
ああ、
Well, yeah. It's not like my first instinct to hearing this story would be, well, let's go and stop him, would it? In his heart of hearts, Natsuhiko did not truly believe Mashiro's story. But he spoke gently so as not to hurt her feelings.
どうしても気になるなら、警察や市の保安課にでも通報するべきだよ。それが僕らにできる精一杯のことさ。
関係なくないよ。私たちの街が狙われてるんだよ。通報以外にもできることがあるかもしれないじゃん。大切なものは誰かが守ってくれるのを待つんじゃなくて、自分たちの手で守るもの。そうでしょ、夏彦。
Natsuhiko was a little shocked. Mashiro's words sounded a little melodramatic to him.
なんだよそれ。またなんかの引用か。
It's probably something that you said, motherfucker.
前にも言ったろ。良かれと思って行動するだけじゃダメなんだって。正義感も過ぎると危険を招くだけだよ。
But when Mashiro heard that, she just smiled sadly.
夏彦、変わっちゃったね。
変わってなんかないよ。僕は昔からこうさ。
いや、変わったよ。あの時は私が止めたのに。
あの時
He could not for the life of him remember what she was talking about. If something like that did happen, it must have been far in the past. Eventually, a door to Natsuhiko's memory opened. That's right. It was that day 9 years ago. When I tried to go somewhere with Yuri. And Mashiro tried to stop me. The conversation they had in the distant past came back to life in his heart.
やめなよ、夏彦。危ないよ。あんなところ行っちゃダメだって。
真っ白ビビってるのか？じゃあいいや。有利誘おっかな。
何さそれ。近頃いっつも有利有利って。
なんだよ。まさかやきもち？男女のくせに。
夏彦なんかもう知らない。有利とどこにでも行っちゃえ。
I shook off Mashiro's warning and we still went there. And because of that, Yuri... Natsuhiko's pulse intensified and his breathing became rough. Bitter regret stained his heart.
そうだな。そんなこともあったな。
あの時は夏彦の方がわがまま通したくせに。
He felt her words pierce his heart. 9 years ago, Natsuhiko took Yuri and shook off Mashiro's attempts to stop them. They ended up in an accident. Perhaps Mashiro felt responsible for that incident too, for failing to stop them. But still, there was something Natsuhiko just knew he had to say.
昔とは違うんだよ。あの頃はただ向こう水だったんだ。真っ白、警察。
Ooh, okay, hold up. Let's go back. I'm not like how I was in the past. I was just reckless back then.
あの時は夏彦の方が。
So let's go back.
あの時は夏彦の方が。
What if we lowered ours to like 0? Yeah, here we go. But Natsuhiko was clearly more in the wrong, which is why.
でも、だからこそ、お前には危険な真似をさせたくないんだ。頼むよ、真っ白。
Alright, I like that more.
それで終わりにしよう。
The other one felt like he was just kind of trying to put it off and like shove it under the rug. Use it as an excuse.
どのみち僕らにできることなんてそれくらいしかないんだから。
そっか。本当に変わっちゃったんだね、夏彦。
I do also wonder. I mean, I imagine it's probably going to end up going to this like whole thing of, oh, you really have changed anyway. But I am kind of curious. What if we did this?
昔とは違う。真白。
Oh, okay.
警察に
Yeah, I like the other one better.
あの時は夏彦の方がわがまま通したくせに。
Yeah, I like this one a lot better here.
でもたど
Machiro smiled in resignation. But a moment later, her expression turned to anger.
そんなに安全が好きならずっと家にいれば。
え
もう夏彦には頼らないよ。じゃあね。
おいちょっと待てよ真白。
Machiro flew out of his room as if to shake off Natsuhiko from stopping her. Confused, Natsuhiko tried to chase after her, but by the time he left the house, Machiro was already nowhere to be found. The evening rain had stopped and the stars were somewhat visible.
なんだよあいつ。
Natsuhiko muttered as if to spit out his bitterness. He had no clue what made Machiro so mad. I didn't say anything wrong, did I? Natsuhiko looked up to the sky with that shaky conviction of his. Sparkling stars dotted the whole sky. The stars were spread out far apart and never seemed to overlap, much in the same way that human hearts never do. The distance between them all was hopelessly far. Even if we've known each other for years, there's still several things we don't understand about each other, huh? With that in mind, he turned around and went back inside. He headed towards his room without stopping by the living room. He sat on his bed and began to think about what happened with Machiro, when suddenly he heard a knock on the door. Let me guess, it's Yuri. There we go.
ユーリか空いてるよ。どうぞ。
お邪魔します。
Yuri timidly walked into Natsuhiko's room.
どうしたんだいユーリ。部屋を訪ねてくるとは珍しいな。
なんか真っ白の大きな声が聞こえたから。
ああ、聞こえてたのか。さっきの話。
少しだけ。
Apparently, since they talked so loud, Yuri even heard it in the living room. Natsuhiko looked around awkwardly as Yuri questioned him.
真っ白怒っていたみたいだけど、何かあったの？
いや、僕にも何が何だかわからないんだけどさ。
Natsuhiko summarized the conversation he and Machiro had had.
真白はどうして怒ったんだろうな。
Yuri frowned at Natsuhiko as she responded. I think I have an idea.
マシロンは昔のヒコ
Yeah,
リ
that's
ンに
exactly
戻
what
って
it
も
is.
らいたいんじゃないかな。正義感が強かったヒコリンが今じゃすっかり変わってしまった気がして悲しかったんだと思うよ。
え？
Yuri smiled slightly as she nodded.
街を駆け回っていた子供の頃、あの頃のヒコリンに
But
戻
I
ってほ
can't,
しいだ
Yuri.
けなんだ
I'm
よ。
traumatized. And don't want to change. I can't do that.
誰かが困ってたり泣いてたりしたらすぐに助けに来てくれたものね。
We gotta lock in, bro chacho.
マシロンも私も助けられたことあるし。
そうか。
Certainly enough, Natsuhiko did have a stronger sense of justice and initiative back then. But he still did not want to believe that the past him was the better him.
でも、なあユーリ、今の僕の考え
Yeah.
って
Well, not
そん
bad.
なに良くないかな。
I would say it's bad, but obviously you're like the main character of this and one of the only ones who can like stop what the fuck's about to happen or at least damage control. So
あの頃は確かに自分なりの正義感に従って僕は自分から行動を起こしていた。だけどそんなの所詮は子供の考えだよ。結局その結果どうなったか。そばにいる大切な人を危険な目に遭わせてしまっただけじゃないか。
じゃあヒコリンはあの頃の自分が間違っていたっていうの？
ああ、
Ooh, I wonder. Here we go.
「僕はあの頃の自分より今、そりゃ昔の方が元気で大人になるにつれ成長する。
Okay, gotcha. So basically, one path he's like, obviously, doubling down on it, right? He's saying, "No, I am better now," versus this, which he's saying like, "Oh, was I really so wrong?"
じゃあヒコリンは
ああ、周りの人を危険に巻き込まないように思慮深く冷静に、そうやって少しずつでいいから成長したかったんだよ。
That was the best he could do to atone for what had happened to Yuri. And yet, Yuri herself looked Natsuhiko in the eye and responded.
違うよヒコリン、それは成長じゃない、停滞だよ。
Yuri's tone of voice changed abruptly, startling Natsuhiko. It couldn't be, he thought as he looked at Yuri. And as he looked at her, there was a look in her eyes that was different from normal.
9年前のあの日、ヒコリンの時間は止まったの。そして止めたのは私。
Mashido? Why is it giving me a sense of sympathy for Mashido? Yuri stopped my time?
きっとマシロンは今でも自分をすごく責めてる。そのマシロンが危険な目に遭おうとしているのに無視するのがヒコリンなの。私を気遣うようにマシロンのことも気遣ってあげてよ。そうしなければいつまでも時間は止まったままなんだよ。
ユーリ、何を言ってるんだ。なんか最近おかしいぞ。
そうだね、急にこんなことを言い出すなんておかしいよね。でもおかしい
Let
の
me
は
save real quick.
きっと全てがおかしいの。ヒコリンの見聞きしているもの全てが。
Once Yuri said that, Natsuhiko fearfully looked at his watch. And of course, it had broken before he'd noticed it. Hold up, let's go back. I'm sorry. I'm going back and forth so much, but
そして止めたの
if we were to like lower this, right?
私。その私を
そんな
嘘。
嘘じゃないよ。だけ
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Roger that. So, yeah, this is good. I'll take that. So what do we end up saying?
私そうしなければ
Time will say stop forever.
急にこんな。
So I guess one of them is basically just like we're either in denial or we're kind of like actually communicating our genuine feelings. Again? Upon seeing his broken watch, Natsuhiko had realized something. September 13th had long come and passed. The sliver of peace he had obtained had long since been lost, and thus Natsuhiko was torn away from his peaceful recollection. Ah, okay. We're calling it a recollection now. And returned to reality. Aha! In reality, Natsuhiko was standing in front of a collapsed emergency staircase. Beside him were an anxious Mashido and a frightened Yuri. They'd gotten separated from Salyu and were searching for an escape route. As he remembered what happened that fateful night, Natsuhiko ground his teeth. I didn't believe Mashido at first when she told me about the terrorist plot. And this is the result of my disbelief. Natsuhiko was filled once again with regret. What I need to do first is to get Mashido and the others out of here. Natsuhiko rushed to the stairwell and looked up. Is there any way to climb this thing? If I can at least get Mashido and the others out, then As that thought crossed his mind, oh, what the fuck? A small figure appeared at the top of the stairs.
サリュ
Oh, okay, I thought her body was like hanging or something. Okay, fuck. Once Natsuhiko yelled, she looked down at them.
あいつらはどうなった？倒せたのか？
ごめん、不覚を取った。
As soon as she said that, Natsuhiko heard the sound of a drop of water dripping down. A red stain formed on the floor. A stain of Salyu's blood.
サリュ、怪我してるの？
不覚を取ったって。まさか奴らに？
二人を倒したところで、新たにもう一人現れ、銃撃された。
And now that he thought about it, the enemy did show up with guns last night. Crap, it was so obvious. Why didn't I even consider the possibility? Salyu glanced at the painful-looking wound on her arm.
敵は体格、腕力に優れ、数も不明。
じゃあどうすれば？
逃げるしかない。一刻も早く、遠くまで。
Right as Natsuhiko found himself at a loss for words, a voice rang out on the intercom.
地上フロアで行った点呼により、施設内の全職員の避難が確認できました。万が一職員以外の方が残っていたら、直ちに第5、第6エリア方面から脱出してください。
As she heard the announcement, Salyu sighed in relief.
天川博士も逃げた模様。あとは私たちが避難すればいいだけ。
じゃあサリュ降りてきてくれ。一緒に逃げよう。
いや、この腕じゃここは降りられない。夏彦たちが上がってくるのも難しいと思う。まごまごしていたら敵に追いつかれる可能性もある。だから別々に逃げよう。そんな、サリは一人で大丈夫なの？大丈夫。でも根拠を話している時間はない。だから PC で。
Right after Salyu said that, her mental voice rang out in Natsuhiko's head. Her clear, high-speed thought process. Natsuhiko gasped as it all came rushing into his head in a single instant.
サリュ
Yuri and Mashiro looked up at Salyu in the same way.
サリュちゃん、私もだよ。サリュ。
Natsuhiko forced a smile and spoke up.
わかった。この二人のことは僕に任せろ。もう一度約束だ。全員生きて外で会おう。
必ず。
And with that, Salyu disappeared.
行こう。二人とも。サリュとの約束を守るためにも。
Mashiro and Yuri nodded meekly, and then the three of them ran off once more. The broadcaster said that the staircases in Area 5 and 6 were safe. Okay. The three of them walked through the connecting passageways towards the goal. But once they left Area 3 and approached Area 4's outer ring, they found it wreathed in flames.
これは光。どうしよう。
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that what I desire. Yuri and Mashiro looked at Natsuhiko with concern. Decisively, Natsuhiko answered.
突っ切っていこう。第5、第6エリアの階段もいつまでも無事とは限らない。できるだけ早くこの第4エリアを通過しなきゃ。
確かにそれに幸い通れないほどじゃないね。
ユーリは大丈夫か？いけそうか？
平気だよ。
よし、それじゃ行こう。
And with that, the three of them walked into the fiery area.
煙を吸わないように姿勢を低くして袖を口に当てるんだ。
The three of them crouched down and walked on the floor. The flames flickered against the walls as the heat waves closed in on them. Eventually, Mashiro rose her voice from behind. Natsuhiko turned around in shock to see her rubbing her eyes painfully.
どうした？
煙が目に。
大丈夫。僕が手を引いてってやる。目をつむったままでいいから走れ。
Natsuhiko took her by the hand with his right, and Mashiro gripped firmly back.
ほら、ユーリも。
Natsuhiko grabbed Yuri by the hand with his left, and he ran ahead, guiding the other two, and they somehow managed to slip out of Area 4. The three of them rushed into the connecting passageway to Area 5. The security gate closed behind them automatically, making sure that the flames wouldn't follow.
二人とも無事か？
大丈夫。
Relieved, Natsuhiko led the two girls as they walked through the passageway. But as soon as they turned the corner, They found another fire and wait.
そんな。
通れない。
The flames in the passageway were intense. Anyone who attempted to cross them would surely catch fire. Crap, we're caught between fires. When that voice crossed Natsuhiko's mind, Mashiro groaned.
真白、泣いてるのか？
どうしたの？どこかやけどしたの？急にみんなに申し訳なくなっちゃう。
This ain't the time, Mashiro! Mashiro muttered through her sobs.
テロの話を聞いたときはこんなことになるなんて思わなかったんだよ。さらに怪我もさせちゃった。私たちで火に挟まれて。夏彦の言うこと聞いとけばよかった。ごめんね、巻き込んで本当にごめん。
Dragged. That word shook Natsuhiko's heart.
違う。巻き込んだのは僕だ。警報が鳴った時、僕が地下に降りなければみんなを巻き込まずに済んだんだ。
Regret suddenly filled Natsuhiko's heart. He dragged those precious to him into danger once again, just like he did 9 years ago. Just this time not just Yuri, but Mashiro and Salyu too. The headache he'd forgotten came back stronger, except now it was accompanied by the pangs of guilt.
悪いのは僕だよ、真白。お前は何も悪くない。だから泣かないでくれ。
Mashiro wiped her tears and looked at Natsuhiko.
夏彦こそそんなこと言わないで。夏彦は戻ってくれたじゃない、昔の夏彦に。それだけでもね、私は良かったんだ。
Her words were tinged with both gentleness and slight resignation. An intense pain ran through Natsuhiko's chest. Damn it, what do we do? Smoke was drawing near from around the corner, but he couldn't come up with their next move. But that very moment, Yuri spoke up.
マシロンは間違ってるよ。
Huh?
ユーリ。
ヒコリンはまだ戻ってない。時間は止まったままなんだよ。9年前のあの日から。
Natsuhiko couldn't believe what he saw. That was the same warning Yuri gave him on September 13th.
止まったまま。
そう。だから私はヒコリンの時間を動かすため何度でも記憶を巻き戻すよ。
Rewinding my memory.
その先に今日があるとしても、とても辛い現実が待っているとしても。
Natsuhiko still couldn't quite understand what Yuri was saying. But I do understand what's going to happen now. There's something that Natsuhiko had already come to digest. Whenever Yuri says these things, a bizarre phenomenon occurs, doesn't it? Natsuhiko looked at his watch. It had already begun to tick away the time. The date was 9/14. The time, 6:59. 2 days before the incident. Ah, I see. That was the day our daily lives came crashing down. His vision went dark, and in the darkness, he heard her voice.
本当の始まりはここからなの。真実と向き合う時が来るんだよ。お願いヒコリン。どうか目を背けないで。
And as Yuri appealed to him thusly, Natsuhiko's conscience returned to September 14th. Okay, that answers a big question. So it's Yuri has been the one. Well, I mean, we kind of already knew this, but Yuri's been the one who's been throwing us back and forth. But it's not time travel, which I don't think I ever thought it was time travel. It is quite literally her using probably some form of telepathy to black us out and mentally rewind us back to these moments. So we are quite literally reliving these memories. Natsuhiko peacefully awoke from his sleep that day. Although this morning wasn't particularly unpleasant, he still somehow felt depressed. The sound of rain could be heard from outside the window. It had temporarily let up last night, but appeared to have started pouring down once more. Natsuhiko headed to the living room to see only Yuri and nobody else. Sally was probably still sleeping.
真城は
来てないよ。
やっぱりか。
Mashiro would often not come to the house the day after a fight. Yuri glared at Natsuhiko judgmentally.
そう睨むなよ。昨日のあれはどっちかっていうと真城が悪いだろう。いきなり口頭無形な話をしといて信じてもらえないからって怒るんだからさ。
それでも信じてあげればよかったのに。
そんな無茶言うなよ。
Natsuhiko was a little dejected that even Yuri was criticizing him.
なあ、ユーリもこの町の治安の高さは知ってるだろう。テロなんて起こるわけないじゃないか。仮に起こったとしてもどうするんだ。テロリストと単身戦うのか。ハリウッド映画じゃあるまいし。
そうだけど、それじゃあヒコリン後悔するかもしれないよ。
後悔？どうして？
なんとなくそう思うだけだけど。
Yuri said no more. The rain outside somehow sounded somehow softer than silence.
まあ、真城のことについては心配するなよ。後でちゃんとフォローしておくさ。
うん、それならいいよ。
Once Natsuhiko gave in to the pressure and said that, Yuri smiled with her whole face. But still, what should I actually do? Is there something I can do that both Mashiro and Yuri would agree with? The moment that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, Sayu showed up in the living room.
起きたの？夏彦。
さっきね、サリは？
私も先ほど。
Sayu looked around the room and continued.
今日は真城はい
ないよ。
どうして？
そこは察してくれよ。
Sayu tilted her head in confusion.
まあ、明日には来ると思うよ。私の大切さ、よーくわかったでしょとか。
私はもう理解している。真城が来ないと
No,
ご飯
Mashiro
が
needs
食べ
no
られ
food.
ない。
ああ、悪いけど今日は貧相な朝食になるよ。
And with that, Natsuhiko tossed some bread into the toaster. But still, it's been one thing after another every morning lately, huh? It wasn't like all this just a few days ago. But today's event, Mashiro's absence, was particularly rough on Natsuhiko's heart. He honestly believed that his daily routine would continue forever, and yet... would it really? And yet now that question rose up inside his heart. One day my peace could end. One day I could lose those close to me. One day my precious memories could crumble. Each of those things is clearly possible, so have I just been averting my eyes from the inevitable? It was a question he'd put little thought into, but it nonetheless tore at his heart. But why am I even worrying about this? Natsuhiko shook his head as if to clear it of unnecessary thoughts. Yuri just watched him silently. The morning bell rang as Natsuhiko and Sayu entered the classroom.
間に合ったか。
真城がいない。
あ、本当だ。
And now that he got a good look, Mashiro's seat was empty. He couldn't even see her bag nearby.
休みか。風邪でもひいたのかな。
And Natsuhiko said as he sat in his seat. Eventually, Anna entered the classroom.
はーい、皆さんおはよ
Alright, please.
Sorry,
I love the world
she's
building,
the
but
key to
I
it,
would
yeah?
rather not sit through another entire like legitimate entire history lesson. Alright, please, I'm begging you.
う。赤川くん。
はい。
猪瀬はー、小田くん。
And thus, roll call commenced. But as she eventually got to Natsuhiko's name,
天川くん。
はい。
鳥羽さん。鳥羽さん？あれ？鳥羽さんは休み？おかしいわね。休みの連絡もらっていないのに。
yeah, that's not good. You have a major fight with your friend after she brings up to you that that there's a fucking terrorist plot going on, and then she disappears. That has to make you feel fantastic, doesn't it? That could only mean that Mashita was in a rush and skipped school without permission, even though she was not usually the type to be a truant. Don't tell me.
ねえ、きっとこのことに気づいてるのは私たちだけだよ。だったら何としてもテロを阻止しなきゃ。
That idiot. Don't tell me she actually plans to try and stop a terrorist plot. But judging by how Mashita was yesterday, that did indeed seem plausible. I don't know on what basis she believes in an actual terrorist plot, but whatever it is, it's definitely not a problem that a mere high schooler can solve. In fact, Mashito's actions could cause some sort of danger. That was the vague premonition he was getting. I guess I'll look for her after school. Afterwards, Natsuhiko continued his classes somewhat absent-mindedly, and as lunch break began, there was still no sign of Mashito. Specialty schools like Rokame Academy ran full-time classes every second and fourth Saturday. So to prepare for afternoon classes, Natsuhiko brought some bread and ate it in the classroom. He and Sayu spoke sparingly.
カツサンドうまい。
普通。
普通。
そうか。
Without Mashito as their mood maker, conversation just wasn't happening between them. I never thought this would be how I learned how much of a blessing it was to have Mashito around. The moment that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, an announcement came streaming out of a speaker affixed to the classroom wall.
緊急放送です。先ほどこの校舎内に危険物が仕掛けられたとの通報がありました。生徒の皆様は落ち着いて教員の指導に従い、直ちに校庭に避難してください。
Natsuhiko gasped, and the whole class stirred in unrest.
危険物？マジかよ。おいこれニュースでやってた一連の騒ぎと関係あんじゃねえの？
やだ、何それ。なんでうちの学校が狙われるの？
The students' agitation created a positive feedback loop, quickly turning the classroom into a turbulent echo chamber.
危険物だって。
全校生徒を避難させなければならないということは、ガスもしくは爆弾だと思う。
Natsuhiko choked on his words. No way. You mean Mashita was right? The moment Natsuhiko considered that possibility, Ena came rushing into the classroom.
みんな、今の放送聞いたわね。
Her voice was more forceful, her expression colder than usual.
長い人生、今だけでいいから落ち着いて。まず全員、一度自分の席に着席して。
The students sat in their seats as instructed. Ena quickly scanned the classroom for empty seats.
鳥羽さん以外はみんな揃ってるわね。それじゃあ避難を始めます。出席番号順に並んで。私。
The students muttered amongst themselves as they nervously stood up. At the very least, it looks like they're serious about the dangerous object. Then, assuming there really is a terrorist or whatever, what if Mashita went to search for them and actually ran into them? Impossible. Such a stupid coincidence could never happen. But despite his rejection of the idea, he couldn't shake off the anxiety he felt. Come on, dude. That's... Oh, God. This guy pisses me off. He's pissing me off. So you're telling me... So you'd basically jump from this. You jump from... there could never be terrorists in Rokame City. They take civil order so seriously. Mashito, you're overreacting. There's no terrorist. Come on, like, the chance of there being a terrorist are 0. And then the next day, they're like, oh, yeah, guys, there's a fucking bomb in the school. And so your first thought to the idea that, oh, Mashito could have actually, like, ran into the terrorist and something bad could have happened to her is, nah, she would never run into the terrorists. I mean, do you realize how stupid that is? Like, how fucking dumb that logic is? Ugh. Without thinking, Natsuhiko suddenly stopped in his tracks.
どうしたの、天川君。避難の列に
No,
並ん
I'm
で。
gonna find Mashiro.
はい。
As he answered, Natsuhiko heard a voice in his ear.
それじゃあヒコリン、後悔するかもしれないよ。
Natsuhiko gasped at those words. They were the words Yuri had said this morning. And 1 second later, Natsuhiko opened his mouth.
いえ、先生。
and out came words he'd never expected to say.
すみません、早退してもいいですか？
Bruh.
夏彦。
何を言ってるの？いいからまず避難しましょう。
確かにそれもそうなんですが、真白の安否が気になるんです。
It was something that the usual Natsuhiko would never say.
本当すみません、行きます。
ちょっと
He heard Anna, but chose to ignore her. He flew out of the classroom to find Mashiro. When he got outside, the streaks of rain had more or less abated. Thanks to that, he could search outside without needing an umbrella. The only problem was that he had no honest idea where Mashiro could be. So for now, he just took out his PDA and tried to call her, but
くそ、繋がらない。
it was ringing, but Mashiro wouldn't pick up. She's still mad about yesterday? He was fine with it if she wouldn't pick up. If she couldn't pick up due to injury or other danger, that would be a different story, though. Oh well, I guess I'll go on foot. The moment he made that decision, he heard Salyu's voice from behind.
夏彦、何をしようとしてるの？
え？なんだ、ついてきたのか。
夏彦が動いたから。それより、どうして
I am
おとなしく避
evacuating
難
just
しないの？
like more efficiently.
決まっているさ。真白を探すんだ。
真っ白？なぜ？
実は昨べ。
Natsuhiko gave a simple explanation for what happened last night.
テロリスト。そんなことが。
まあ、何かの勘違いだとは思うけど、一応ね。
でももし本当だとしたら、危険なことも起こりうる。
そうか。
Actually, he didn't see. As always, he couldn't quite understand her, but there was no time for discussion.
わかった。じゃあ一緒に探してくれ。
了解。真っ白の行く先に当ては？
ないよ。でも、とにかく探さなきゃ。
And with that, the two of them ran into the rain. Natsuhiko and Salyu checked the whole town. They combed through every place Mashiro was likely to go, but there was no sign that they would find her.
くそ、どこにいるんだ、真白は。
少し休むべき。すでに20分は走り続けている。
仕方ないか。
Natsuhiko combed through his disheveled hair and took a few deep breaths.
ったく、真っ白のやつ、手間かけさせて。
As he muttered that, Salyu responded in a cold voice.
さっきから夏彦は悪態ばかり。そんなに言うなら探さなければいい。そもそも夏彦はテロリストの存在については真っ白の勘違いだと思っているんでしょ？
テロの話なんて信じちゃいないけど、それはそれとして真っ白は心配なんだよ。友達が急にいなくなったら心配になるのはわかるだろ？
いや、理解できない。言動と行動が矛盾している。真っ白の言葉を信じていないなら放っておけばいいのでは？
何？
夏彦の言によればテロリストなんていない。だ
It's kind of
な
dry.
いだろ。
Natsuhiko was a little perturbed.
サリュだって真っ白には結構世話になっているじゃないか。
それとこれとは別の話。合理的に判断してるだけ。
な、ちょっと冷たすぎじゃないか？そんなんじゃ友達できないぞ。
Oof. Natsuhiko regretted those words as soon as they left his lips. That was essentially an outburst of anger. But Salyu calmly replied.
別にいい。友達とか。
よくないだろう。人間ってのは輪の中でしか生きられないって言うし。
では逆に聞く。友達ってどういうもの？
え？それはよく一緒に行動したり、あとまあ互いに楽しいとか悲しいって気持ちを分かち合ったり。
Natsuhiko gave a general answer to Salyu's blunt question.
そう。私もそう聞いた。ならば私にはそれを得るのは不可能。
不可能ってことないだろう。普通に考えて。
本当に無理なの。
Salyu interrupted Natsuhiko and informed him of a truth he'd never heard before.
私には他人の気持ちというのが全く理解できない。
Yeah, no, we kind of clocked that a while ago.
脳の機能が。
なんだって。
Natsuhiko unintentionally gasped.
でもサリュにだって感情はあるだろ？
それはもちろん私にだって感情くらいはある。
じゃあそれを他人に当てはめて。
そこが無理。私は他人が感情を持っているということは理解できても、それがどう変化するのか考えることができない。それが私の欠陥。高い能力と引き換えに。
Yeah, she's definitely a fucking lab experiment.
私にできることは他人の言動を頭から信じるか否定するのみ。言外に含められた思いや細かいニュアンスなんて理解しようがない。そして夏彦はテロリストを信じていないという。なのに真白を探す。だから混乱しただけなのに。
Saliu hung her head as she finished. Is that even possible? But despite his doubts, he felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. I see now. So that's why she treasures Alice so much. Saliu said that ARMS device was meant to read the moods of others, so that was why she couldn't ever be without it. If she couldn't understand other people's feelings, she had no choice but to trust in Alice's judgment.
体質的なものなのか。
そうなんだと思う。脳も肉体の一部だから。様々な体質が存在するように、脳にも様々な得意点があるのも当然。例えば夏彦にも木や花や虫の気持ちはわからないはず。
Nope.
それはまあそうだけど。
それときっと同じ。私には人の心と虫の心の違いがわからない。私の脳は他人の気持ちについて考えようとさえしてくれないの。
そんなのって。
Sad. Natsuhiko forcibly swallowed that word down, because Saliu most likely was not seeking pity when she told him this truth. But still, Natsuhiko wanted to at least say something, so he tried his best to write out some words.
BC。そうだ。BC を使えば他人の心もわかるんじゃ。
Sure enough, Saliu supposedly had rank D aptitude. She could learn how to use empathy. It would take a considerable amount of effort, but it wouldn't be impossible. And if she did, it would make living easier for her. Or so Natsuhiko thought.
その望みはない。私は本当は適正度 F で能力も皆無。
Huh? Rank F aptitude is specified that no one was unable to use BC at all. In other words, no amount of effort would ever allow one to use BC.
じゃあどうして D だって。椿山先生もそう言ってたけど。
6名学園に編入するのは適正が F だとできないから、天川博士が診断書を偽造してくれたの。
そこまでして。
Saliu nodded plainly. It was hard to believe, but judging by her expression, it didn't seem dubious at all.
本当に使えないのか。
昔は練習したこともあったけど、 BC が使えれば人の気持ちもわかるかと思って。でも私には無理だった。昨日真白に教えてもらった時は久しぶりにやる気を出した。でもやる気でなんとかなる問題ではない模様。今ではもう諦めている。他人の心なんて分かりようもないと。日本に来て夏彦たちと出会い、楽しいこともあったけど混乱することも多く、時々怖くなる。やっぱり他人と触れ合うべきではなかったのかもしれない。
How exactly must that feel? To be unable to understand others no matter how much you try. To be the only one left out when everyone else around you reaches for understanding of what's on each other's minds. Natsuhiko was at a loss just trying to imagine it. I see. Sally's relationship to others is like the relationship between communicators and ordinary people. Once he thought about it that way, a memory of the past arose from the back of his mind. And there we go. When he was young, Natsuhiko was the center of attention for the neighborhood kids. Back then, Natsuhiko loved BC. Without thinking too deeply about it, he yearned to be something special, which is why he dreamed of being a communicator. But right before he got into elementary school, he learned that he really did have the aptitude to become one for real, and thus it was decided that he and Mashiro would enroll in Rokime Academy. Which meant that eventually they had to leave all their previous friends behind. People stopped gathering in the park they always played in. The only ones to stay with Natsuhiko were Yuri and Mashiro.
あれ今日もいない。なんでみんないなくなっちゃったんだ？
小学校に上がってもずっと友達だよって言ったのに。
Yuri spoke up after Natsuhiko and Mashiro muttered those words.
私たちがコミュニケーターでみんなが普通の人だからだよ。
え？
心を読まれると思って怖がってるのかもしれないね。
Since Yuri was 2 years their senior, she likely had a better understanding of society, particularly the social implications surrounding communicators.
何それ全然わかんないよ。
僕たちまだテレパシーも使えないのに。
They could do nothing but deny Yuri's observation, which only made her smile sadly.
そうだね。だけど向こうもそう思ってくれるとは限らないんだよ。
Natsuhiko just couldn't comprehend what Yuri was implying, but he took her words and facial expression and engraved them into his heart. And that was possibly the first time Natsuhiko began to feel that he couldn't understand what was on other people's minds, but he was still okay with that. If he acquired the skill of empathy to read the minds of others, then he would be able to understand the feelings of those who distanced themselves from him. At least, that's what he'd hoped. His second major turning point was the incident 9 years ago. Yuri used to be calm no matter what the situation, but that all changed after the incident. Natsuhiko found himself stunned and dumbfounded when faced with Yuri's refusal to leave the house. Yuri's transfiguration made Natsuhiko sad, dejected, and regretful to the core, as well as a little frightened. Ever since then, Yuri stopped going to school and her BC ability never improved, and Natsuhiko lost the motivation to train his BC ability as well. For if one day he were to become able to read Yuri's mind, and what he saw there was resentment towards him, then he would probably never recover. While he did want to know what was in her heart, his fear of actually knowing far outweighed his curiosity to know. So instead, he swore to, at the very least, watch over her, even if his oath was worth nothing more than a pittance of atonement. Even if staying by her side had nothing to do with actually understanding her. Even now, Natsuhiko could not completely cast aside his fear of other people, his fear of knowing what lied in other people's minds, and his fear of knowing what clouded his own mind as well. That was why he kept his distance from his classmates. But how is it with Selyu? He thought back to the day she transferred in. Selyu avoided the other classmates and sat in her seat all alone. Does she avoid everyone in the same way that ordinary people avoid communicators? That was somehow similar to what Natsuhiko did, which is why he couldn't help but say,
他人と触れ合うべきではなかったなんて、そんなこと言うなよ。確かに他人の気持ちなんて僕らにはわからないよ。混乱することも怖くなることもある。それでも考えるべきなんじゃないのか。
Natsuhiko thought that perhaps he wasn't the most qualified of people to speak on the subject, but regardless, he continued.
今、僕は僕なりにサリの気持ちを考えて発言したよ。それも無駄なことなのか？
それで何か分かった？私の気持ち。
わからないさ。僕はサリュじゃないからな。
そうでしょ。だったら結局。
違う。僕やサリュに限った話じゃないんだ。誰だってそんなことわかるわけないんだよ。
え、私だけじゃなくてみんな同じなの？
ああ、そうそう。だって確かに僕はサリュとは性別から能力まで何もかも違うからな。だから君の気持ちもどうしたって理解できない。それはきっと全ての人々の間に横たわる真理だ。
Natsuhiko could not hope to know the world as Selyu observed it, and thus neither could he hope to have a complete understanding of her feelings. The same went for Yuri. Even with empathy, the best he could ever hope for was a glimpse of a small facet of her mind, and that's to say nothing of his fear of learning something he shouldn't. He'd always thought this way, but
でも僕らはそれでも分かろうとする努力をするべきなんじゃないか。
Natsuhiko vocalized an idea that he himself had always been rejecting. But as he vocalized it, he gradually became more and more aware of how it was an idea that he had originally always held.
他人の心が分からなくても努力し続けるのが、つまりは人を思いやるってことで、それはきっと自分のためにも他人のためにもなることでさ。そう思わなきゃ誰にも優しくなれないじゃないか。
そんなことを言われたのは初めて。
僕もこんなこと言ったのは初めてだ。
変な人。私は夏彦が何を考えてそんなことを言ったのか。
ああ、それも分からなくてもいいよ。
分からなくてもいいの？
そう考えた方が気が楽だろ。
Sayu hung her head as if deep in thought. She eventually looked up and asked Natsuhiko a question.
つまり夏彦が悪態をつきながらも真白を必死で探していたのはそれが理由？
ああ、その通りさ。
Because of the unexpected turn his conversation with Sayu had taken, Natsuhiko had forgotten about Machiro for a moment.
あいつが何を考えてるのかわからないけど、会って聞こうともしなけりゃその気持ちに近づくことさえできないだろ。
心配するってそういうこと？
ああ、きっとね。
そう。
Sayu nodded with that and continued.
私には相変わらずわからない。言動と行動が一致しない夏彦の気持ちは。だけど他人の気持ちなんてどうせわからないというのは私にとっては嬉しい言葉だった。少しだけ救われた。ありがとう。
Natsuhiko was startled by her honest expression of gratitude.
感謝されるほどのことじゃないさ。ただ。
ただ？
いや。
Natsuhiko swallowed his words. The words were, even if people can't come to an understanding, perhaps they can come to a compromise. He didn't say it because he thought it might just confuse Sayu again. And then, after Sayu stared blankly at Natsuhiko for a while, she suddenly glared at him as if she remembered something.
とはいえ私は夏彦も心配。
え？なんで？
不明瞭な情報を盲信する真白とあてもないのにそれを追う夏彦は私から見れば似たり寄ったり。
まあ確か。
闇雲に探しても見つかるわけがない。まず落ち着いて考えよう。真白を見つける方法を。私も一緒に考えるから。
ああ。
Natsuhiko replied enthusiastically to Sayu's proposition. Natsuhiko and Sayu spoke as they looked at the map posted on the bus stop.
この広い街の中からどうやって探せばいいと思う？
電話はかけたの？
かけたよ。でも出てくれないんだ。
Sayu pondered for a second before coming up with an answer.
電話がつながらないなら
That's what I was
テ
going
レ
to
パ
say.
シーを使えば。あの事故現場で会った時夏彦は強力なテレパシーを使っていた。あれならどこにいるのかわからない真白にも連絡できるのでは。
テレパシーか。
According to Ukita, Natsuhiko's telepathy apparently reached as far as a kilometer away, and he knew Mashiro's characteristic brain waveform quite well after all the practice they'd done. But Natsuhiko had never consciously used telepathy on his own.
僕にできるか？
真白曰くテレパシーのコツは伝えたい言葉を心の底から念じること。素人考えだけど心底真白を心配している今ならできるのではと思う。
うん。可能性はあるかもしれないな。
We can't do it, and then it's
ちょ
like,
っとやってみよう。
oh my god, excuse me. We can't do it, and it's like, oh, I guess we're not actually concerned about Mashiro. Let's just move on. Natsuhiko resolved himself and placed a finger to his temple. It was the same basic stance Mashiro had used to facilitate telepathy.
では私は応援する。頑張れ夏彦。
ごめん。 少し
Sorry, shut the
静か
fuck
に
up.
してくれ
Sorry, just shut the fuck up for a second, please. Salyu fell silent. In the midst of the soft sound of the pouring rain, Natsuhiko concentrated with all his mind. He couldn't dare use mass on targeted telepathy. He absolutely needed to make sure his message had directionality. First, I need to make myself keenly aware of Mashiro's characteristic brain waveform. Her waveform was type 2. Oh wait, I gotta have confidence in myself. Have confidence! There we go. He thought of her and focused hard on the words he wanted to deliver. Mashiro, where are you? Why won't you pick up? Salyu and I are worried. Contact us if you're okay. He mentally repeated that message over and over, without thinking about anything else at all. And then suddenly, the surrounding sound of the rain disappeared. For a second, he thought the rain had stopped, but that wasn't it. The rain was still falling. He merely stopped hearing the rain because his 5 senses had dampened. And in place of his sense of hearing, he gained another sense, a strange 6th sense beyond his usual 5. What's going on? It's like I can feel my own brain cranking. The world was full to the brim with BC particles, and Natsuhiko felt as if he could see their very movement through his brain. This is BC? Natsuhiko concentrated even further. He focused on the complex, minute electrical signals that formed his desired message.
マシロ、今どこにいるんだ？連絡してくれ。
The message loaded onto the BC particles in his brain and were expelled out into the world.
夏彦
Eventually, he snapped back to reality once he heard Salyu's voice.
どうかしたのか？
急に顔色が蒼白になったので驚いた。大丈夫なの？
ああ、多分。
Now that he thought about it, he remembered what Anna had said. BC can cause the 5 senses to dampen, and in certain cases, even vital signals like body temperature and pulse can drop. That said, he hadn't heard a thing about complete hearing loss or turning pale. Perhaps those were side effects of the extreme concentration.
まあ、あれだけ集中していれば、マシロにも届くかもしれない。
That would be assuming Mashiro was currently less than a kilometer away from them. With that thought in mind, they waited a little while, but still did not receive any contact from her.
失敗したのかな。
Once that utterance eventually left his lips, an electronic sound chimed from within Natsuhiko's pocket.
何？
メールだ。
Natsuhiko took out his PDA and opened his email. The display showed the following response. Holy cow! Sender Mashiro Soba. Was that your telepathy, Natsuhiko? So you really can use telepathy now, huh? Congrats! But it's a little disappointing that your first use of telepathy was to send such a cut and dry businessy message. Incidentally, I'm at the White Tiger Gate. I'll go to school once I'm done with my business, so no need to worry.
白虎門？なんであいつあんなところに？
Natsuhiko cocked his head after he finished reading the email.
それって何？
町の西側にある都市ゲートだよ。
Rokame City was surrounded by a fence in order to maintain public security, but obviously there were entrances in the fence. There were 6 city gates in total, and the White Tiger Gate was one of them.
そこまでテレパシーが届いたの？
そうみたいだな。
The White Tiger Gate was about 2 kilometers away from where they were. An effective range of 2 kilometers made his latest use of telepathy even more far-reaching than what he did at the scene of the accident. It's hard to believe all of a sudden, but if Mashiro said she heard it, then it was probably true.
ではどうする？
We're gonna go to the
用事
gate.
が終わったら学校に
We're
行くと
gonna
言
win
って
the
るけど。
gate.
いや、こっちから迎えに行こう。用事ってのが。
What are you doing? Are you dealing drugs, Mashiro?
了解。
It was not a distance that was impossible to run, so Natsuhiko and Salyu began running towards the city gate. The city gate. It was something of an inspection booth established on the main road that connected the city to the outside world. A guard was stationed at a box nearby. All people wishing to leave or enter the city were required to go through the proper paperwork beforehand. Then once at the gate, passage required proof of citizenship and a strict security check. The gates were thus seen as something of a status symbol befitting of a government-designated top-secret city. As they got close, Salyu muttered.
なんだか嫌な場所。
ん？そうか？
まるで市民を閉じ込めているみたい。
それは考えすぎだよ。
The city was obviously not a prison. It was a bit of a hassle, but normal citizens were able to leave and enter the city. The gates and fence were actually dependable blessings since they served to blockade suspicious characters from entering the city.
まあ長居するような場所でもない。さっさと真城を探して戻ろう。
And with that, they looked around and found her soon enough. She was at a bus stop near the gate, seemingly waiting for a bus. She hadn't noticed them. They rushed up to her and called out.
こら、何やってんだよ、真城。
来たの二人とも。
来たのじゃないだろ。心
I
配
hit
か
my
け
mic.
て
I'm。so sorry. Are you guys okay? Pats your head and gives you a kiss on the forehead.
なんだ、別に来てなんて頼んでないよ。
何？
Dang. She thinks she is tsundere for real.
夏彦にはもう頼らないって。
I guess in this case, we would want to lower our sympathy level to be like, oh no, you're so right, Mashiro.
テロリスト捜索の一件は俺の山だ。お前らは手出すな。
Mashiro still seemed mad about yesterday after all. Natsuhiko didn't understand what rubbed her the wrong way, but he did know that since she got like this, it was hard to get her to stop. But still, isn't she being a little too stubborn? She probably had her own reason for being mad. But Natsuhiko laid off on that subject as he piled on the questions.
わかった。それはひとまずいいよ。でもどうしてお前自ら探してるんだ？警察か保安課に通報しろって言っただろう。
したよ、もちろん。昨夜のうちに。でも警察も保安課も全く相手にしてくれなかったんだよ。
Natsuhiko thought that was the obvious response, but didn't say anything.
ではなぜ真城は一人でこんなところに？
いや、警察も保安課も頼りにならないから。仕方なく自力で6つの都市ゲートを巡ってさ。監視員さんにテロリストらしき人が侵入していないかを聞いて回
Excuse
っ
me,
てたの。
Mr. Gate Guard. Have you seen any terrorists lately?
地道だな。で、成果は？
ここで6つ目だけど、素性の怪しい人は全く出入りしてないって。
だろうな。
It was unthinkable that terrorists could infiltrate the city that easily. You know, speaking of terrorists, kind of a weird, like, little side plot, but I am reading Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, which I'm at a point in the story where, like, that's kind of the whole thing. You have this, like, major Disney-like theme attraction park in Spain that like these terrorists have, like, infiltrated. So, like, you know, they've gotten jobs working as security, and they've gotten a lay of the land. They know all the underground tunnels and camera systems and how the camera systems work and the backups and the security like things in place. So, you know, procedures and stuff. They know when money is getting transferred in and out of the park. You know, they work as just, you know, part you know, you have some of them that are in there as like park goers or just staff, or even some of like the mascots and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just like, you know, the whole thing about terrorists. It's unthinkable that terrorists could infiltrate the city. It's very thinkable that terrorists could infiltrate the city. I think that's kind of a misconception that, like, terrorists are like these super, they're suspicious dudes and they walk around, you know, with hats covering their faces and their hoods up, and, you know, they're looking around all black, super suspicious. It's like they're not like that at all, though. They tend to look very fucking, like, normal. That's just me, though. That's you know, that's my 2 cents as a terrorist expert. So, you know, just to throw that out there. Anyway.
そういう楽観主義が一番危険なんだよ。浮田のおじさんも近頃コミュニケーターを疎ましく思う人たちがいるって言っていたでしょ。夏彦だって無関係じゃないかもしれないじゃない。
まあ、それはそうだけど、おじさんの話とテロリストうんぬんって話にはだいぶ開きがあるぞ。
Mashiro fell silent in mortification. But that's when Salyu cut in.
いや、確かに楽観主義は良くないかもしれない。学校に仕掛けられた危険物の一件もあるし。
危険物？それどういうこと？
ああ、いや、昼休みにこんな放送が。
Oh yeah, we completely fucking forgot about that. I forgot about that. There was a fucking, probably what was the equivalent of like a bomb threat, or a bomb in the fucking school. As soon as Natsuhiko finished explaining what happened,
学校に爆弾が。
いや、爆弾って決まったわけじゃないって。
放送の内容からそう推測しただけ。
でもそうかもしれないじゃん。2人ともとりあえず学校に戻ろう。
言われなくても戻るつもりだっての。
And right on cue, the bus arrived. The three of them boarded and headed for school. As they rode the bus, Mashiro muttered in a stiff voice.
学校大丈夫かな。
Fasten
大丈夫だ
now!
ってば。さすがに粉々になったりはしてないと思
You
う
guys
ぞ。
listen to The Weeknd? I listened to 2 songs by The Weeknd, False Alarm and Blinding Lights. And that's mainly because Blinding Lights was like, if you went to a roller skating rink when that song was like always playing, it was just it was the chillest vibe ever. I wish I could go to a roller skating rink again. I mean, like, I can. There's not really too many that are close to me. I kind of have to go out of my way. And it's just a different vibe where I am. Like, you have roller skating rinks where it's like, yeah, you know, my name is Tony, and this is my friend Chad, and then this is my friend, you know, Stacy, and we're going to go to the roller skating rink and drink some pop and eat pizza. And then you have the roller skating rink where it's like, yeah, my name is Doug, this is Terry, and this is fucking, you know, this is Unk, right? And we're going to fucking put on like some funky ass music or some rap, and we're going to do like insane coordinated fucking like line skating. You know what I'm talking about? Those videos where you got like those fucking, you know, you got those unks on the roller rink, and you know they're fucking like skating to some music. It's that kind of shit. It's a completely different vibe. Also, it's more crowded. So I guess where I moved from just had less of a roller skating rink culture. So it just tends to be a lot more crowded, and I suck at roller skating. So I kind of just like to go fast, but then I end up crashing into people, so, you know, it doesn't really work out. Anyways. What were we saying? And as they had that conversation, the bus dropped them off in front of the school, but the school was gone. The grounds were awfully silent. The commotion seemed to have died down already.
本当に危険物仕掛けられてたの？
少なくともそんな放送はあった。私たちも詳細は。
As Sally began to speak, they heard an angry voice coming from somewhere.
こら、あなたたち！
あ、先生。
They looked to see Anna rushing over to them.
もう勝手なことして先生心配したのよ。
すみません先生、私のせいなんです。
あら、鳥羽さん、風邪か何かじゃなかったの？
そういうわけじゃないんですが、ちょっと野暮用で。
野暮用で学校を休むんじゃありません。はい。
Mashiro quietly bowed her head.
ところで先生、例の危険物騒ぎはどうなったんですか？
あれはデマだったみたいなのよ。
デマ？
トイレに次元爆弾のようなものが仕掛けられていたんだけど、それっぽく見えるおもちゃだったわ。
おもちゃ？どういうこと？
わからないわね。誰がやったのか知らないけど、たちの悪いいたずらかしら。近頃こういう事件が多いようだけど、困る。
Anna didn't seem to know the entire truth behind the situation either.
なるほど。それじゃあここに長居する意味はないね。行こうみんな。
Oh. Mashiro pulled Natsuhiko and Sally by the arm and ran off. Anna shouted in surprise from behind.
ちょっとあなたたちどこに行くの？授業再開してるから出なさいってば。
すみません、野暮用です。
だから野暮用で授業を休むなって言ってるでしょ。こら。
Her voice eventually faded away into the distance.
おい、真白、何やってんだよ。
真っ白、腕が痛い。
Once Natsuhiko and Sally finally complained, Mashiro stopped and answered.
構うことないよ。どうせ明日は日曜日だもん。週明けにはほとぼりも冷めてるでしょ。
She got this shit laid out.
エナ先生、夏彦には甘いしね。
Hey, what can I say? I love me some fucking teachers, man. Again, I'll say it every single time this is brought up. Why would I not enjoy the attention of a young, big-breasted, slightly mean but also endearing school teacher. Like, and when I say young, I mean young as in like she's like an adult, like she's older than me, but she's like not fucking like 50 or something, right? You get my drift, okay? You get what I'm fucking trying to say. But even if they return to school now, they'd only make it back in time for 6th period at best anyway. And his impression bothered him just a little bit, but Natsuhiko set that aside and instead turned to Mashiro.
まあいいよ。で、僕らを引っ張っていってどうするつもりだ？
いや、そのね、もしよかったらテロリストの捜索を手伝ってほしいの。
え？
夏彦は分かってくれないみたいだけど、私は自分の住む町に危機が迫ってるかもしれないのに何もしないなんて嫌なんだよ。
でもテロリストが実在するとしても私たちの力で阻止するのは難しいのでは。
そうだね。だけどそれは無理っぽいと思ったからって何もしなくていいってことにはならないでしょ。
Sally gasped. Perhaps she was thinking those words resembled what Natsuhiko had told her earlier. Mashiro's words made Natsuhiko reconsider his own thoughts slightly as well. I guess words really can't persuade her, huh? But if you were to leave Mashiro as is, she would probably just start acting on her own. Even if there weren't any terrorists, Natsuhiko had to admit that he'd worry about Mashiro if he let her out of his sight. Fine, I guess I'll play along with Mashiro until she's satisfied.
わかったよ、マシロ。そんなに言うなら手伝ってやる。
本当に？
ただし、とりあえず今日だけな。それからのことは後で考えよう。
それでも十分だよ、夏彦。
Mashiro finally smiled.
サリはどうする？
私としてはテロリストの捜索などという危険なこと推奨はできない。だけど夏彦が言うなら仕方ない。
サリも？やった嬉しいよ。二人ともありがとう。本当は一人で心細かったんだ。
She's so selfish, Natsuhiko thought with a wry smile.
それじゃ次はどこに行くつもりだ？
どうしようかな。まず気になるのは学校の爆弾騒ぎがデマだったってこと。これって妙じゃない？そうなると他の事件の実情も気になってくるよ。
他の事件？
ほら、近頃街を騒がしている火事とか怪文書騒ぎとか。
Natsuhiko recalled the news he'd heard several days before.
今朝未明、6名市の BC トレーニングセンターに過激派団体による怪文書が届きました。昨夜、6名市内の研究施設 BC 開発センターで火災があり、研究棟6棟が全焼しました。
そういえばエナもそんなことを言っていた。類似の事件が多発してるの？
だったら当事者に話を聞いてみるのがいいかもしれないね。怪文書が届いたってのはどこだっけ？
確か BC トレーニングセンターだよ。
よし、早速行ってみようよ。
ちょっと遠いぞ。
なに、大した距離じゃないよ。ほら、行こう。
Mashiro ran off again, nearly dragging the other two behind her, towards a BC training center situated in the heart of the city. The BC Training Center. It was sort of a gym provided for people who wished to hone their BC skills. The three of them stopped a man about to enter the building to ask him about the objectionable literature.
怪文書の内容？
はい、それをちょっと知りたくて。
He was a trainer for the center who seemed to be in his early 20s. The trainer looked at the kid suspiciously.
その前にさ、君たち何？少年探偵団かなんか？
そう、そんな感じです。市民の平和を守るため街を駆け回る正義の味方です。
今時そんな遊びする子いるんだね。まあ、君ら可愛いからちょろっと話してあげよう。
Bruh. He looked at Mashiro and Salyu and spoke with a broad grin on his face.
確かだいたいこんな感じだよ。これ以上 BC の普及に組みするならば制裁を加えるみたいな、ひねりもユーモアもないやつ。そんなんがポストにねじ込まれててさ。ちなみに最初に発見したのは俺ね。
あれ？ひょっとして危機感とかは全く感じてないんですか？
感じるかよ。まあ一応保安課に通報したんだけど、騒ぎになって逆にビビったよ。
As she heard the trainer's story, Mashiro whispered in Natsuhiko's ear.
やっぱり BC を憎んでる風の文面だね。
ああ。 まあ
As the two of them were having that private discussion, this time Sayu asked the question.
騒ぎになったというと？
それが保安課の連中がさ、退去して押し寄せてきやがんの。警備だなんだって。
でも怪文書くらいでそんな騒ぎになるもんですかね。
ま、保安課の反応もわかるっちゃわかるよ。なんせあの怪文書には9って署名があったからさ。
Huh? Mashiro shook as she heard that letter.
なんだよ真白、突然大声出して。
何 ?9 って。
おいおい、君らアンテナ低いな。ネットとかじゃ有名だろ。
ネットはあまりやらないものですから。
後で詳しく教えるよ。ところでトレーナーさん、その後の Q の動きは？
さあね。でも Q の連中がこんなしょぼい施設狙うとは思えねえし、ただの語りかもしれないよ。
The way he spoke about Q made them seem like some giant organization. As Natsuhiko fell into confused silence, the trainer continued.
まあ、俺に話せるのはそのくらいかな。怪文書も保安課に回収されて、ここにはもうないしな。
そうですか。ありがとうございました。
そんじゃあな。正義の味方諸君。
And with that, the trainer entered the building, leaving Natsuhiko and Sayu to quickly ask Mashiro the pressing question.
で真白、何なんだよその Q だっけ？
Q ってのは。
Mashiro made a meek face as she explained the organization to Natsuhiko and Sayu.
コミュニケーターの存在に異を唱える国内最大の過激派団体だよ。その活動は爆破予告や脅迫、場合によっては直接行動もためらわない危険な集団らしいの。
そんな奴らがいるのか。
He obviously knew of the existence of anti-BC protest groups and ideology, but he never heard of an organization that operated at a level dangerous enough to be called extremists and terrorists.
まあ無理ないか。調べなきゃ出てこない名前だし。
でも確かに存在するのね。
うん。私がバスの中で聞いたのが Q のメンバーの声なら納得だよ。この町の歴史を終わらせるなんて、そんな危ない思想を持ってるのは Q くらいだもん。
そうは言うけどさ、具体的に破壊活動を行ったことはあるのか？
あるよ。っていうか、夏彦もその痕跡は目の当たりにしているはずだよ。
え？
ちょっと遠いけど、行ってみようか。
Natsuhiko pondered that question for a second before nodding, chills running down his spine the whole time. Mashiro guided Natsuhiko and Sayu to a certain place in the outskirts of town. They lay the ruins of a burned-down hospital. Soot still clung to the site in places, and shards of glass were scattered about everywhere.
ここが旧六名市立病院跡。さっき言ってた Q の破壊活動の痕跡だよ。
これが。
This was the place that Natsuhiko certainly did remember. When he was young, he'd come here with Yuri and Mashiro on a dare.
思い出した夏彦。
ああ、当時はそんな場所だって知らなかったけど。
どうしてこんな焼けてしまっているの？
Mashiro took one look around the burned vestiges before answering.
ここは昔市内最大の病院として市民に親しまれていたの。だけど16年前のある夜、ここに火が放たれた。この時放火したのが Q のメンバーだと言われてるんだ。連中が起こした最初の事件だよ。
犯人は捕まったの？
うん。ここを焼いた犯人はね。
ここを焼いた犯人は？
犯人は一人じゃなかったの。その夜、この市の十数箇所で同時に放火があったんだよ。犯人が全員捕まえられたのかどうかはよくわかってない。六名士同時多発放火事件。
六名士同時多発火災か。
Natsuhiko faintly remembered hearing about that incident before. Unfortunately, all he remembered was that such a thing had happened. Since there were so many victims in the incident, it was not an easy subject to broach. Furthermore, Natsuhiko never considered actively attempting to research it.
でも、真白はどうしてこれが Q の仕業だって知ってるんだ？
昨夜ネットで調べただけで簡単に分かったよ。だからこれから話すことはネットの受け売りだけど、Q はその時期に結成された組織みたい。 この町は当時からコミュニケーターが多かったから、それで標的にされたんだろうね。
その頃からキュートやらはそんな妙な組織名を名乗ってたのか？
キューと名乗り始める前の組織名は反 BC 連盟。反 BC 連盟のメンバーは同時多発火災の犯人として逮捕されたけど、そうして投獄されたメンバーが出所してからキューという組織名を名乗り始めたらしいんだよ。その理由や組織名の由来まではわからないけどね。
そうなのか。昔の組織名の方がテロリストらしいって感じがするけどな。
それにしても真っ白、九段の火災から16年も経ってるのに、この建物が取り壊されない理由は？
多分誰かがそう望んだんだよ。事件が風化することを望まない誰かが。
They looked around. Sure enough, the place looked like a scene frozen in time. It'd probably been left alone as is for 16 years. And yet the incident gradually faded away from the public's mind, and likely nobody ever visited anymore.
その後、キューは
コミュニケーターの多く住んでいる地域を狙って何度か破壊活動を行ってるっていう話だよ。12年前のサルベツ市 BC 研究所爆破事件、11年前の七星大超心理学科放火事件、9年前の牛追市民ホール立てこもり事件、7年前の
Jesus fucking
塩
Christ.
市炭疽菌散布事件、6年前の小金浜
So they've
浄水場
exploded
人
building.
工事件
They exploded buildings, burned buildings down, caused sieged fucking city halls, caused quote unquote incidents, and poisoned water purification plants. Oh my god.
それ全部キューの仕業なのか？
Natsuhiko was surprised. He'd heard about all those incidents on the morning news. However, none of the incidents were reported as terrorism.
ネットの情報はあやふやなところも多いけど、どうもそうみたいだよ。
ネットね。
Natsuhiko never really liked the internet. He didn't quite understand why himself, but if he had to describe it, it'd probably be because of all the apparent abundance of dubious information like what Mashiro was talking about.
いずれにしても、そんなタチの悪い組織があるなら、聞いたことくらいあっても良さそうだけど。
過激派の名前なんて知らなくて普通だよ。日本には昔からいろんな過激派組織があるけど、その組織名なんて一つも知らないでしょ。
いや、Q は特別だろう。僕らに無関係ってわけじゃないんだし、この町の住人にとっては重要じゃないか。
Mashiro made a complicated expression as Natsuhiko said this.
だからこそだよ。Q が絡む事件については、この町じゃあまり
I'm guessing it's like we don't want to empower them or give them attention and like allow them to fearmonger is what I'm assuming it is.
どうして？
深刻な社会不安を起こさないためってのがその理由みたい。Q はいつでもコミュニケーターを狙って破壊活動をする。その事実が大々的に報道されたら、この町にたくさんいるコミュニケーターたちはどう思う？
It would obviously cause a state of panic. It could very well strain tensions between communicators and ordinary people.
私たちは生まれた時からコミュニケーターが保護されているこの町に住んでるんで気に留めなかったけど、でもそれ以外の地域では Q の悪行はありのままに報道されているらしいの。コミュニケーターと一般人の圧力ってのも未だに根強くあるみたい。だからだと思うよ。近頃六名士の人口が増えてきてるのは迫害とかテロを避けるため、よそから逃げてきてるんじゃないかな。
The last statement jogged Natsuhiko's memory. 10 years ago, when Yuri moved into Rokame City, when he'd asked her why she moved at the time, she said it was because they measured my BC attitude and found out it was rank C. Natsuhiko thought that she simply meant that they had moved to Rokame City because of its tax and education benefits for communicators, but that wasn't it. Was she persecuted in another town or felt threatened by acts of terrorism, and that's why they escaped to Rokame City? Even as recently as 10 years ago, understanding of communicators was still insufficient. So it wasn't any stretch of the imagination to believe that Yuri's family did indeed seek refuge in Rokame. I can't believe that's what the outside world is like. Even though Natsuhiko had only heard half the story, Mashiro's sense of impending danger was gradually getting through to him. But in addition to his fear, he felt doubt about something else.
でも、だとしたらなんかおかしくないか？それほどの組織にしては、今回の事件のやり口は手ぬるいような気がする。
手ぬるい？
学校の危険物騒ぎにしてもトレーニングセンターの怪文書にしてもただ騒ぎを起こしただけですぐ収束してるじゃないか。
確かになんだか愉快犯的。
So I guess right now this is all pointing at Q being the ones behind the supposed nuclear. Well, it's interesting because there's supposed like. We'll get into it at the end of the video. I'll hold my theories for now.
意味もなく騒ぎを起こしてどこかでそれを見て笑ってるのか？何のために？
Mashiro had no answer. Natsuhiko looked around the burnt ruins and spoke.
なあマシロ、やっぱり考えすぎなんじゃないのか？
考えすぎって？
あのトレーナーさんが言ってたように今回の一件は Q の名前を語った誰かの仕業って気がするよ。
夏彦、ひょっとしてやっぱり私の言うこと信じてないの？
いや、信じてはいるさ。だけど
Natsuhiko hesitated for a second.
テロリストがバスの中で他人に聞こえるようにこの町の歴史を終わらせるなんて言うかな。さっきの話を聞いて余計にそう思ったよ。本気でテロを起こそうとしてるなら絶対そんなこと口にしないだろう。
確かに私もそう思う。隣に座っていた私の耳にも聞こえなかったし。
それはでも確かに私は聞いたんだよ。
Mashiro spoke in a strong tone of voice. Her obstinacy seemed suspicious to Natsuhiko.
あのさ、マシロ、ひょっとしてお前何か隠してるんじゃないか？
Huh?
テロが起こるって信じるに足る理由が他にあるのか？
Whoa. Whoa, this got serious. Mashiro's eyes widened.
ないよ、そんなもの。
That reaction alone was enough to convince Natsuhiko. She was indeed hiding something.
マシロ、僕はお前が心配なだけなんだ。気にかかることがあったら話してくれよ。
何もないってば。
そんなわけないだろう。何か言えない理由があるのか？
For some reason, Mashiro's eyes were tinged with fear. For the 10 long years he'd known her, Natsuhiko had never seen such an expression on her face before. Why is she so... But as if to interrupt his thoughts, Salyu muttered.
真っ白、あなたもしかしてその男の心の
Yeah.
声を聞いたの
See?
では？
Okay. That's what I was thinking it was. She heard somebody's mental voice. Well, well, well. Another theory of mine proven correct. Mashiro gasped and looked at Salyu.
サリュー、どうしてそんなこと言うの？
もし言葉ではなく心の声を聞いたとしたらそこまで信じるのもわかる。
何言ってるの？そんなこと私にできるわけ。
Contrary to her words, Mashiro was clearly caught off by the question. It wasn't that she seemed surprised to hear completely unexpected words. It was more like Salyu hit the nail on the head. Even though Mashiro's ability was supposedly limited to telepathy only.
ちょっと待ってくれ。どういうことなんだ、マシロ。まさかお前本当はエンパシー使えるのか？答えてくれ。使えるのか？
Mashiro fell silent for a little while, but eventually she muttered in resignation.
いつから？
黙っててごめん。本当は何年も前から使えるようになってたんだよ。
何年も前から？
Natsuhiko's mind drew a blank at the unexpected time frame. A trembling voice spilled out of his mouth.
じゃあお前がテロが起こるって信じた理由は？
サリューの言う通りだよ。私ね、あのバスの中でテロリストの心の声を聞いたんだよ。
Now that his secret was out, Mashiro voluntarily spoke about the next topic.
私はあの時バスの中で2人とおしゃべりしてたよね。
ああ。
するとその途中でバスの前の方に立っていた人がこっちを振り返ったんだ。そしてしばらく私たちをじっと見ていた。
私は気づかなかった。でも
わからないよ。サングラスと帽子をつけてて表情も見えなかった。でもいい年齢のおじさんだったし。
He was older, so I was afraid he might have been a pervert targeting Salyu.
よ くないとは思ったんだけど、その人に対してエンパシーを使っちゃったんだよ。すると聞こえてきたの。一瞬穏やかな声で懐かしい会話だって。
懐かしい会話？
それもわからないの。ただ向こうはなぜか一瞬だけ私たちに心を許していたみたい。問題はその後なの。その直後にその人は思い直したようにこう考えたんだ。待て、何も考えるな。万一誰かに心を読まれたら計画は失敗だ。そこから断片的な言葉の羅列が、コミュニケーターは忌むべき存在。こんな町の歴史は終わらせてやる。あと数日の辛抱。誰にも心を許すな。怪物だらけの町。そう思って。そこでその人は心を閉ざしちゃって、もう心の声は聞こえなくなった。だけど一瞬だけど、その人の感情も本気でテロを。
Oh fuck. I felt his malice and his resolve to seriously commit terrorism. See, now if she would have just like fucking told us this from the get-go, that would have been a different story. Because this isn't like a, oh, I may have heard something. This is, yeah, no, I fucking read this guy's mind and felt the malice and like determination to actually pull this shit off. Natsuhiko gulped upon hearing Mashido's story all the way through.
それでどうなったんだ？
うん。その人はすぐバスを降りちゃったから、それ以上のことは分からなくて。昨夜話したように考えすぎだと思おうとしたんだけど、後半の言葉の羅列が耳について、なんだかどんどん怖くなってきちゃって。
僕に相談してきたってわけか。
Mashido nodded quietly. It certainly would be odd for someone besides an actual terrorist to think those thoughts. It was hard to believe he merely hated communicators if he were taking precautions against having his mind read in such an everyday situation. The countdown of just a few more days also gave a sinister sense of legitimacy.
でもマシロ、どうして正
Legit,
直に
yeah,
言ってくれな
why?
かったんだ？心の声を聞いたって。
確かにそうすればこんなに混乱することもなかった。
言えるわけないじゃん。だって夏彦エンパシー怖がってたでしょ。BC のせいで友達に嫌われるのはもう嫌だもん。
Now that she mentioned it, Natsuhiko did remember the conversation they had a few days ago.
エンパシーが使えるやつがそばにいるかもしれないって状況は考えてみれば怖いよな。
夏彦も心を読まれるのを恐れる口なんだね。
そりゃあまあ平気な人もいるかもしれないけど、僕はやっぱり怖いよ。そういうことだったのか。
Natsuhiko finally realized just how oblivious he had been. Mashido was probably trying all this time just to tell Natsuhiko she could use empathy, but she was afraid of how he would react, so she had kept it a locked-up secret in her heart.
ごめんマシロ、察してやれなかった。お前も僕と同じく BC のせいで友達なくしてたのにな。
こっちこそ騙してて本当にごめん。
Natsuhiko and Mashido apologized to each other. It was quite a surprising development, but Natsuhiko somehow managed to come to terms with the truth. After all, since they both had similar experiences, he understood Mashido's feelings painfully well. Basayo, on the other hand, calmly piled more questions onto Mashido.
マシロ、警察に通報した時はどういう風に伝えたの？
だいぶ悩んだんだけど、正直に伝えたんだ。エンパシーで心の声を聞いたって。でも信じてもらえなかった。テロリストが他人に心を開くとは思えません。保安課に通報した時も同じだった。確かにそれが正論だけど、夏彦たちは信じてくれるよね。
Her eyes were tinged with anxiety. It broke Natsuhiko's heart to see her like that. I bet Mashido's been feeling so desolate ever since yesterday. He finally understood why she was indignant last night and why she took such baffling actions today. It was because she alone knew about the existence of terrorists in the city. Because even though she knew they had to be stopped, no one would believe her. Not the police, nor the security department, nor even her friend of 10 years. What the hell am I doing? I was supposed to believe in her even if nobody else would, wasn't I? Natsuhiko ground his teeth and looked at Mashido.
当たり前だろ。いや、信じるのが遅くて悪かった。今からでも一緒にテロリストの捜索を手伝わせてくれるか。
もちろん。
As Mashiro smiled in relief, Sayu spoke up.
私も信じる。真白は嘘をついていないから。
分かってくれる？
Sayu held up Alice and replied.
実はさっきからアリスを真白の顔にフォーカスしていた。怯えや懇願の反応はあったけど、それ以外の反応はなかった。
W. Alice.
そうか。サルにとってはそれがエンパシーみたいなもんなんだね。
そこまでじゃない。でも私はアリスを信じるしかないし、真白のことも信じたい。それだけ。正直私は乗り気じゃないけど、でも役目として二人を守ることはしようと思う。いいよ、
それで十分すぎ。ありがとう、サル。
Mashiro hugged Sayu tightly, a charming gesture in Natsuhiko's eyes. Looks like she's finally back to the usual Mashiro, huh? As Natsuhiko breathed a sigh of relief, Mashiro grinned at him and spoke.
よし、それじゃあ早速。
了解。
ああ、僕も本腰を入れるよ。
Natsuhiko and Sayu nodded, and the three of them left the hospital ruins. The three of them talked as they walked outside.
それじゃあどうやって捜索しようか。
I think we'll go ahead and stop it there. That's actually a really good stopping point. So let's go ahead and save, and then we can go back to the title menu. Okay! Wow! Well, that's a very good point in the story for us to have come back to it, huh? So, now we know of the existence of a terrorist organization. So, a couple of interesting things. Let's keep in mind, there's still the mystery of what the fuck is going on with Watari. Is that his name? Watase. Right? That's his name, Watase? I think. Anyways, yeah, Watase. We'll say this name. The captain, right? Watase. That's what I'll call him. There's still the mystery of him. What he was doing beforehand. How he actually knows the kids. Why Sayu attacked him. Okay, there's a lot. There's so much going on. So this is kind of my very rough theory that I've kind of sort of gotten an idea of. I'm guessing the kids are eventually going to have their search lead them to the to Labo. They will have likely told Enna about it at that point, to which Enna would have said, "Oh, I don't really believe you," or "Hey guys, just like leave it to the adults, don't chase this by yourselves." So then they would have obviously not listened to her. They would have gone to Labo, but then Enna would have also gone to Labo to investigate on her own because she's a goat. And these terrorists more than likely have either already infiltrated Labo and have set around these bombs, right? So the kids are doing their investigation. This would all explain how they would have, they would have talked to Enna, how they all would have ended up here. Their search would have led them to Labo. So it's very possible that the terrorists have infiltrated Labo already and set bombs around the place. So that's why these quote-unquote explosions are going off. And all these fires and stuff are happening. And it's like, it's stuff that doesn't really seem like it would be caused by just a melting down reactor. So then obviously the rescue team is then dispatched because as far as Labo is concerned, hey, this is an actual like reactor meltdown, so we need to evacuate. It's a level N situation. So we need to evacuate everybody under that pretense. Rescue team is dispatched. Now, it's very possible that the rescue team had also already been infiltrated. So the rescue team had been infiltrated. Some of the people that were sent down to try and either kill researchers, kill communicators, or steal research, or even just assure the destruction of said research. Those are going to be the people that Sully was fighting off earlier. So that's why when they run into Watase and his group, they're just instantly under the assumption, okay, these are the quote-unquote rescue workers that have been chasing us around the whole time trying to kill us. So that's why we need to continuously run from them. That's why we need to fight them. I was initially under the impression that the particle accelerator that was in the center of the research facility was initially spurring on this violent action, but I'm kind of away from that now. I definitely think its effects that it's having on people, while not supposedly not exactly dangerous and not to the level of actual legitimate radiation, I think it's definitely contributing to the kind of, exhaustion, hunger, and kind of contributing to the psychosis that, you would experience after being down there for so long. So then that would explain a whole lot. Now, then obviously on top, underneath that plot, you have, well, why were they lying about it being a nuclear research facility? I'm still very much confident in my theory that this is not a nuclear research facility, or at the very least, it may be a nuclear research facility, but then it's also operating as a BC research facility in that they are experimenting on people, like literally legitimately experimenting on people. Because they lied about there being a nuclear reactor. There is no nuclear reactor that's melting down, right? It's a particle accelerator that is otherwise perfectly fine and untouched. So there's a couple of discrepancies in the terrorist plot theory that it's like, okay, well, did the terrorists know there wasn't actually a nuclear reactor? Why were they lying about it being a nuclear reactor? If this particle accelerator is putting out, particles that can cause symptoms similar to nuclear sickness or radioactive sickness, like why? What is it there for? What's the purpose? What are they actually researching down in that facility? Again, I'm very confident that they are doing research on humans. So is this like a double thing where it's like you have simultaneously a terrorist plot and also some secret like inhumane research operation going on in the city as well? So it's like and then of course, again, what the fuck is going on with Watase? Why has he lost his memories? Whose side is he actually on? Now, I've been operating under the assumption that there's been some kind of monster down here roaming along with them. Some kind of potential like shapeshifter or something of the sort. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I may be wrong about that. But it's interesting because at the beginning of Watase's thing, he's like, "Oh yeah." He was referring to it. He was referring to it as a monster, right? So there's just so many questions. Why would Watase refer to it as a monster, but then lose his memories and all of a sudden become somebody different? Maybe Watase was the one that was on the bus, and the reason that he eventually came around to being like, maybe he was originally supposed to be a part of the terrorist plot, but then he was supposedly specifically sent there to save Yuri. So then there's that. What the fuck is what's going on with Yuri? There's still so many questions that are no closer to being answered. So I think sitting here trying to fucking consider all this shit is useless. But that's what I have. I have basically what I have had before, just with the knowing that there's a terrorist plot. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it and tell me in the comment section below what you'd like to see me play next. Or if you enjoyed this series or any other videos or series on my channel, go ahead and subscribe and turn on the post notifications so you'll be notified when a new one of those videos comes out. Anyways, that's going to be it for this time. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me through this huge break. And yeah, 200 subscribers. That's awesome. But yeah, see you in the next one. Peace.